Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, dear devotees. Please join us today in the study of Srimad Bhagavad Gita. Today we'll be studying chapter 2, contents of the Gita summarized. It's a beautiful chapter where Lord Krishna reveals Jnana Yoga as well as Karma Yoga and gives a glimpse of Bhakti Yoga to Arjuna. And this is for our benefit because we get bewildered just like we see Arjuna getting bewildered. We see disharmony in our life when we are unable to associate, unable to relate to things at the spiritual level. And we are normally thinking ourselves to be this body. And so we get bewildered with that mood. Hare Krishna. So quickly before starting, I'll read from the summary a specific section. So here in this chapter, Arjuna submits to Lord Krishna and his as his disciple, in disciplic succession of course. And Krishna begins his teaching to Arjuna by explaining the fundamental distinction between the temporary material body and the eternal spiritual soul. The Lord explains the process of transmigration, the nature of selfless service to the Supreme, and the characteristics of a self-realized person.
Did you share the title of chapter?
Yes. Contents of the Gita summarized. Hare Krishna. The title of the chapter is The Contents of the Gita summarized. Please join us for Jai Radha Madhav prayers. Hare Krishna. Please join us for the invocation prayers. So, we are reading chapter 2 of Bhagavad Gita, and our reference is Bhagavad Gita as it is by Srila Prabhupada, the founder Acharya of International Society for Kṛṣṇa Consciousness. Again, and this is again picture of Srila Prabhupada, and of course there are some quotes from other great personalities who were known at that time. Hare Krishna. So the invocation prayers are in the introduction section of Bhagavad Gita. So the link has been provided so that folks can, again we'll provide the link in the comments so that you can go over to the invocation prayers. Please join us for the invocation prayers of Bhagavad Gita. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Actually, this is the invocation prayer for Srimad Bhagavatam. Om Ajnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupaha Kadameham Dadati Swapadantikam. Vande aham Shri Guru Shri Yudapad Kamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahgana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Shri Kṛṣṇa Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahgana Lalita Shri Vishakha Vitamscha. He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Deenabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vancha kalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhya eva cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shiva Sadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, dear devotees. Thank you very much for joining. You're welcome, and we are very grateful for your participation in today's class, where we'll be studying Bhagavad Gita, chapter 2, contents of the Gita summarized. And in chapter 1, we heard about the 4 reasons that Arjuna gave. So I'll quickly cover in 5 minutes. Chapter 1 aspects, summary, and then we will directly dive into chapter 2. But before that, as is the custom, let's cover the very first verse of Bhagavad Gita, chapter 2. So please join us in the recitation of the first verse of Bhagavad Gita, chapter 2, contents of the Gita summarized together. Sanjaya Uvacha Tam tatha kripaya vrishtam ashru purna kulekshanam vishidantam idam vakyam uvacha madhusudanaha. Sanjay said, seeing Arjuna full of compassion, his mind depressed, his eyes full of tears, Madhusudan, Kṛṣṇa spoke the following words. And Srila Prabhupada in the purport reveals that the material compassion, lamentation, tears are all signs of ignorance of the real self. And the word Madhusudan is significant in this verse because Lord, he killed the demon called Madhu. And this is Sanjay is calling, So again, when Sanjay is narrating this, so please join us for Guru Pranati, and then we'll be directly diving into the subject matter. Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Prishthaya Bhutale Śrīmate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paśyatya Deshatarine Mukam karoti vachalam pangum langhayate girim yat kripatadaham vande Shri Gurum Dīnataranam. Hare Kṛṣṇa, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rāma, Rāma Rāma, Hare Hare. Hare Kṛṣṇa, dear devotees. So, in chapter 1 of Bhagavad Gita, the first inquiry, the first verse is inquiry by Dhritarashtra because he is very fearful of the defeat of his sons. Why? Because Kurukshetra is a holy place and the Pandavas, they are very pious, while his sons, headed by Duryodhana and his second son Dushasan, they are very impious and evil-minded sons of his. So here, Dhritarashtra is fearful that in this holy place, Pandavas would be favored. And he sees that in the observing the army, which is in the first 10 verses, where Duryodhana, he approaches Dronacharya trying to be very diplomatic in his dealing, and is saying that look at the formation of the Pandavas in the Vajra formation, and we have the Vyuha formation, and they have great warriors who are equal in strength like Bhima and Arjuna. So he's calling out the top warriors on the Pandava side. And then, just so that he encourages his side, he says that we also have great warriors, and that, you know, the strength of the Pandavas is limited, is not sufficient. But he uses the word aparyaptam, right? And then he's saying that we have sufficient. So again, so he is, when he says that, Goddess Saraswati is sitting on his tongue and is identifying that actually the Pandavas, they have the paryaptam which is sufficient to defeat, and aparyaptam is unlimited, our power is immeasurable. When he is saying aparyaptam also means not enough, not sufficient. So, and then he lists various warriors from both sides and says that all have gathered here for my sake to give up their lives. And he ends that verse with Yuddha Visharada. So the word Sharada is there. So Goddess Lakshmi, she is putting her signature. That Sharada is another name for Goddess of Learning, Saraswati, Goddess Saraswati. And to encourage him, Bhishma Pitama, he blows his conch shell like a lion, giving joy to who? Joy to Duryodhana. Yet at the same time, conch shell signifies as a symbol of Lord Vishnu. So in a way, he is indicating that Duryodhana, you may have so many aspirations, but you will not be successful. And then on the Pandava side, you know, Lord Shri Krishna, he blows his Panchajanyam Hrishikesho Devadattam Dhananjaya. So again, Lord Krishna is blowing his conch, and Arjuna is blowing his conch, and then Yudhishthira Maharaj, Bhima, Yudhishthira Maharaj, Nakul Sahadev, and all the other warriors from the Pandavas, so when they blow the conch shell, hearing the conch shell sounded in this manner, the hearts of the sons of Dhritarashtra, the Kauravas, their hearts are shattered. And who is narrating this incident to whom? This is Sanjay narrating it directly to Dhritarashtra. So Dhritarashtra, his fears are coming to life. And at that time, by Lord's mercy, Arjuna desires and he orders Lord Shri Krishna to take the chariot in the middle of the two armies. And when Lord Krishna, he takes it, you know, in the middle of the two armies, he takes it right in front of Dronacharya and Bhishma Pitama, where they are standing. So Arjuna sees all the relatives that he, you know, has affection for, that he has this loving relationship with, and that they are gathered on this battlefield, and knowing that they will be losing their life, he becomes compassionate. So his compassion shows up in the 20th verse. So 28 to 31, he is expressing his compassion. Arjuna Vacha Drashta Vemam Swajanam Krishna Yuyutsum Samupastitam Siddhanti mama gatrani mukham cha parishusyati. So he is saying Siddhanti, means it's quivering. His limbs are quivering. Mam gatrani. Gatrani means limbs. My hands and legs, they are shivering, they are shaking. Seeing this undesirable, situation. And mukham cha parishusyati. Parishusyati means drying up. My mouth is drying up. So he is saying that seeing my friends and relatives. So again, many times we see that when our friends and relatives are in trouble, then we of course become very fearful and we start praying. So this is the perfect praying situation, because Arjuna is directly praying it to Kṛṣṇa. He is directly expressing his thoughts. Now it is very important in this world, and it's very interesting that even atheists, they study Bhagavad Gita. We have some friends who don't take to Bhagavad Gita teachings as such, but they, in their psychology study, they use Bhagavad Gita and they say, oh, Kṛṣṇa was such an expert that he could completely turn around Arjuna 180 degrees. But in reality, yes, Kṛṣṇa is expert. So in a way they are glorifying. They are doing some kirtanam unknowingly. And yes, he did turn Arjuna 180 degrees by situating him in the right consciousness. So unknowingly, even the atheist, even the materialist, they glorify Kṛṣṇa when they read Bhagavad Gita. So such glorious is this Bhagavad Gita. And it is a perfect theistic science, because it has been spoken by Lord Shri Kṛṣṇa, the absolute truth, the supreme personality of Godhead. And when Arjuna is expressing the compassion, Srila Prabhupada says that this is a quality of a devotee. He is a devotee, he is a friend and devotee of Lord Shri Kṛṣṇa, so he feels that way. So Jiva Daya is one of the dharmas in the current age. Vaishnava Seva, Jiva Dharma and Namaruchi. So these three, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he reveals to Sanatana Goswami, are the true dharma for the current age. And of course Sankirtan Dharma is the congregation chanting, is also being revealed in the scriptures. And then Arjuna doesn't stop there. He continues to express how he is feeling. So our feelings, when we are experiencing something, we should express that to our loved ones so that they can understand and help us. He is expressing in the 29th verse, in the next verse, Vepatushcha sharire me roma harshascha jayate gandivam samaste hastat tvakcheva paridhyate. So he is expressing that Vaputash cha sharire me, my body is trembling, right? Vaputash. So his body is trembling, he is experiencing. And Romahashascha jayate. Romahasya is not like romanch. It's not that the standing of hair when you are experiencing thrill. It's a standing of hair when you are experiencing great unfortunate situation. When you are experiencing that some of your loved ones are going to be departing from this world. So it's in that fear-filled state. So instead of thinking of it as thrill, we should think of these goosebumps coming from fear. And Gandivam Shamsate. So this Gandiva, the bow that he had received from Varun Dev, Lord Varun, the demigod of the sea, the Lord of the sea, it's slipping from his hand. And this is a big deal, because he was very proud of Gandiva, and he had actually used Gandiva to defeat the Kuru's army when they had attacked Viratraj, the kingdom of Virat. So now Arjuna is feeling that. How could he be feeling this? And Tvakcheva paridhyate. So my skin is burning. So you can imagine he was experiencing this, and when he is saying that to Lord Kṛṣṇa, and Sanjay is repeating what Arjuna is saying, that Arjuna is saying this, someone is becoming very joyful. So this is what happens when the devotees suffer. The materialists sometimes feel very happy. So Dhritarashtra, he was not just blind by his eyes. He was actually spiritually blind. So he was experiencing joyful that yes, Arjuna is the best warrior, and if he is not participating, then there is a great possibility of his sons, the Kauravas, to win this battle at Kurukshetra. As Arjuna expresses this, Arjuna now why is he experiencing this? Because he is experiencing that all my relatives are there. So this is showing compassion. And happiness, you cannot just have happiness alone. You may be given all the wealth in the world, but left alone on an island. Can you enjoy it? Right? All the gold. Will you eat the gold? Will you drink the gold? Means how can you enjoy? There is no one there to enjoy with. So we understand that happiness comes from having exchange of loving relationships. This is why Srila Prabhupada established this society, International Society for Krishna Consciousness. And Srila Rupa Goswami reveals the 6 loving exchanges. Dadati pratigrahenati guhyam akhyati pritchati bhunjate bhojyate chaiva sadvidham priti lakshanam. Dadati pratigrahenati, giving of gifts and accepting gifts. Guhyam akhyati pritchati, to discuss confidential subject matters and inquire about the confidential subject matters. And these confidential subject matters should be related with the name, form, activity, pastimes of Lord Shri Kṛṣṇa. Then they are useful, not mundane talks. And bhunjate bhojyate chaiva, giving of prasadam, offering prasadam and accepting prasadam. So these are the loving exchanges which causes, these loving exchanges enable us to come closer, heart to heart talk and heart to heart exchanges and heart to heart sharing of food. These are essential for us to enjoy, to be able to experience, not enjoy, but experience happiness. So that is spiritual enjoyment, when everything is focused with Lord Shri Kṛṣṇa in the center. If we keep ourselves in the center, then it becomes lust, as we'll be hearing in this chapter 2. So he's basically saying that what is the use? How can we be enjoying in this material world? And he expresses that very nicely to Krishna. So he's giving this reason. The second reason he's giving is Kim no rajena govinda kim bhoge jivitena va ye shamarte kangshitam no rajya bhoga sukhani cha ta ime avistita yuddhe pranam staktva dhanani cha acharya pitra putras tateva cha pitamaha matulaha shushraha putraha pautraha shalaha sambhaninastada etana hantumichhami ghanto api madhusudana api trailokya rajasya heto kimnu mahi krite nihatya dhadarashranah ka priti saja janardana. So he's saying, my dear Govinda, now where he is calling Lord Krishna as Govinda, then what is the use to us when all these relatives, our brothers, our uncles, our sakhas, all our friends, even our grandsons and grandsire, Bhishma Pitama, he is gathered. And our teachers, they are on this battlefield, Kripacharya and Dronacharya are on the battlefield. And he's saying, when we, win something, when we have, a lot of riches, then we want to enjoy this with our kingsmen, with our, relatives. What is the use of winning the wealth of the heavenly planets when we have no one to share it with? So he is actually teaching us right there. Means Harvard, if they had just studied this verse spoken by Arjuna, these verses, 31 to 35, then they didn't have to do 75 years of study. They would have understood that, yes, what is the secret of happiness? Loving exchanges. And of course, they would have saved a lot of time. So all you have to do is take to the study of the scriptures, bona fide scriptures like Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam, Chaitanya Charitamrita, where Srila Prabhupada has provided his transcendental ecstasies in the form of purports. And just by reading them, great secrets of life are revealed to us. And that saves us time. Otherwise, with experience, it's going to take a lot of time, and our life is alpayu, right? Sabhya. So in this Kali age, we only have up to
say 100 years of age, and most of the people like 60, 70, or maybe 80. This is where they are, leaving their bodies. So it saves us time, it saves us energy, and we are able to understand and then start practicing. Having knowledge is one thing, but then realization comes when we practice that knowledge, try to dwell it in our life and experience the joy that comes from practicing that knowledge. And yes, happiness is good mode of goodness. So again, the three modes we talked about: mode of goodness, mode of passion, mode of ignorance. In mode of goodness, happiness, as we'll hear later on in Bhagavad Gita, in the beginning is like poison. People say, oh, this is highly disciplined, this is, how do you even endure, this is austerity. No, in reality, in the beginning it appears like poison, but it becomes nectar at the end. So as we experience slowly and slowly. And Srila Rupa Goswami in Updeshamitra, he is revealing that just like when someone is diseased with jaundice, right? At that time you give him a sweet candy and they find this sweet candy very bitter in taste. So that is us. We are diseased in this material world because of the influence of the three modes of material nature. And when we get the taste of engagement of bhakti, right, engagement in devotional service, then in the beginning it looks very hard, it looks very disinteresting. Yet at the same time, if we continue to engage, just like for a diseased person who has jaundice, they have to suck on that candy, and over a period of time it will cure their disease, so they can taste the sweetness of the candy. So similarly, our disease status goes away in the association of devotee when we continue to engage in devotional service. So this is where he is revealing that all of them are here ready to fight, and again, if they are killed, then there is no use for us to enjoy even the wealth of the heavenly planets. Whatever great empire we will win, it will be useless. And he is calling Lord Krishna as Govinda. So there is a significance. He is saying Govinda as a name for Lord Krishna, that you give pleasure to the cows and to the senses. That's the meaning of Govinda. The object is, again, he gives pleasure to the cows, go, as well as pleasure to the senses. Senses are also called go. So because you give pleasure to the cow and to the senses, you should give pleasure to my senses. So you should not engage me. So it's not that he's just giving a reason, he is already putting in an indication that you should support. This reason is not just I'm presenting from myself, you should also support me when I'm giving this reason. Then as he continues to express, the third reason Arjun gives is in 37th to 38th of verse. He is showing his saintliness and the fear of sinful reaction. He is saying, why should we, who see the crime of destroying a family, right? Who's just, my whole family is gathered on this battlefield. And even though the sons of Dhritarashtra, they don't see because they are driven by greed. But we are saintly. So, he is identifying that we are intelligent. So, why should we engage in these acts of sin? So again, this is very important aspect. For the soldier, the duty at the battlefield is to fight. But that soldier, when he comes home, so he is actually awarded medals when he kills the enemy soldiers on the battlefield. But if he comes home, and even if somebody he thinks is not a just person, if he kills that person, there would be a trial in the court, and he could be sentenced to jail or to death or accordingly. So the act is same, that he is killing, but where is he killing? Why is he killing? Who is he killing? All these aspects have to be put in perception, in proper respect, with proper context. When we understand this aspect, that there is a reason, it is not a sinful reaction for Kshatriyas who are killing the enemy on the battlefield. That is the very nature. Shrat means, the one who protects his people, which means he is protecting them from the enemy. And to kill an enemy is an act of Kshatriyas. Yet at the same time, he is showing his saintliness again. That we are saintly, we understand that this is a great sinful act, and why should we engage in this act? And then the fourth reason Arjun gives is destruction of family. In the 39th verse, he is saying, Kulakshaya pranashyanti kuladharma sanatanaha dharme nashte kulam Kṛṣṇam adharmo abhibhavatyauta. Arjuna is saying that with the destruction of the dynasty, the eternal family tradition is vanquished, and thus the rest of the family becomes involved in irreligion. So he also expressed earlier Varna Shankara. So if the family members are destroyed, then of course the women will be polluted because they will be distracted by impious men, and so unwanted progeny would happen. So that was part of the previous one. And so he is identifying that when the destruction of family happens, then the Sanatan Dharma, the regulated principles, they are lost. And he is referring to Pindadan, that is given to the forefathers. So if the future generation do not perform the Pindadan and the Shraddha ceremony, then all these customs would be lost, which will lead for the forefathers to fall down, and then the current generation would fall down. It will be the demolition of the whole family, the forefathers as well as the current generation, and they will all be vanquished. So the family tradition will be vanquished, and the whole family will be involved in irreligion. So that is his concern, and this is where Arjuna is, as he says that, "Oh Govinda, I shall not fight," and he sits down. So at the end of the chapter 1. And when Sanjay says this, that Arjuna has now given up hope of fighting, he is not going to fight, Dhritarashtra is very joyful. Yet in the very first verse, Sanjay is actually telling Dhritarashtra. It starts with Sanjay Uvacha. And he is saying, Tam tata kripraya vishtam. So kripraya vishtam is, which is like seeing Arjuna full of compassion, right? Ashru purna kulekshanam. So his, mind is depressed. Arjuna's mind is depressed and his eyes is filled with tears. So this is where, Lord Kṛṣṇa is seeing. And what is he saying? Vishidantam idam vakyam uvacha madhusudana. So Sanjay is indicating, don't become so happy, Dhritarashtra. Because understand, Kṛṣṇa, he is the killer of Madhu. He is there. He is going to kill all the doubts, all the reasons. He is going to destroy all the reasons that Arjuna is giving. And this, of course, even though Sanjay happens to be the secretary of Dhritarashtra, his charioteer and friend, Dhritarashtra doesn't like when he hears this, of course. So, and when Lord Kṛṣṇa, he is responding to Arjuna, because Arjuna has been speaking and Lord Kṛṣṇa has been hearing. So Arjuna talked about this compassion in this way. Now Bhagavad Gita, the contents of Bhagavad Gita summarized in chapter 2 has been very nicely presented by Gauranga Prabhu. So His Grace Gauranga Prabhu, he has presented in like a 4 or 5 minute video, and he uses the acronym Gītā. So the first 10 verses refer to taking shelter of a spiritual master, Guru. So G is for Guru. I is for identity. Who am I? Why am I here? What is my purpose? So I refers to identity. T refers to our 2 duties. What are the 2 duties? We have been talking in Srimad Bhagavatam class many times. First is our prescribed duties. Prescribed duties are also known as Swadharma, which refers to the body under the influence of the 3 modes of material nature. And then what is the second duty is Sanatan Dharma, which is the duty of the soul, our constitutional position. Jivera Surupoya Kṛṣṇa Nityadas. We are eternal living entities. We are eternal servant of Lord Shri Kṛṣṇa. So, and then A refers to Atmaram. So that's where Lord Kṛṣṇa reveals Sthit Pragya, becomes situated, stable-minded, become stable-minded, become situated in your position with balance to the 2 duties. So again, Swadharma and Sanatan Dharma are prescribed duties and a constitutional position. One relates to the body, one relates to the soul. And both have to be well aligned for us to lead a life of balance and in devotion for spiritual progression, so that we can attain the goal of life. And what's the goal of life? love of Godhead, to go back home, back to Godhead. So that is the goal of life. Now in the first 10 verses is where, taking shelter for Guru. G is for Guru, that has been stressed. Then from 11 to 30 is where the identity, who am I, that has been identified. And then from 31 to 53 is the two duties, Swadharma and Sanatan Dharma, right? Our prescribed duties and constitutional position. They have been described. And even there are actually two subdivisions. 31 to 38, Lord Krishna is talking about Karma Kanda. And then from 39 to 53, he is talking about Buddhi Yoga. So that is very important to understand. So as we'll be covering those verses, I'm just kind of giving you a glimpse of coming attraction, right? These are the coming attractions. And then 54 to 72 refers to Atmaram, Sthit Pragya. So Lord Krishna is revealing that Arjun becomes situated in your position very well so that you can take to, continue to progress without incurring any sin. And we talk of, Lord Krishna talks about many analogies. Sometimes devotees, of course, they have been further stressed out by Srila Prabhupada, but these analogies have originally been given by Lord Shri Krishna in Bhagavad Gita. And so these are wonderful. So in this way, we get glimpse of Bhagavad Gita, of Bhakti Yoga, while Lord Krishna is very clearly describing Karma Yoga as well as Jnana Yoga in the second chapter. And he also refers to the Karma Kanda and some of the secrets, the secret formulas that we'll be studying today. Hare Krishna. So let's get set ready. This is a beautiful chapter where we'll be learning a lot. Now, when someone is so sorrowful, right, and then another person talks to that person and, in response, and the person is smiling in a very strange manner, it may be very hurting. Yet at the same time, when two dear friends, very close friends, and we are very dear brothers, very dear cousins, when they are talking, and if the response comes in this manner, then the person who is receiving on the response side is wondering what is going on. And this is what happens. Shri Bhagwan Uvacha Kutastva Kashmalam Midam Vishme Samupastitam Anarjustam Swargam Akirti Karam Arjuna. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, Lord Shri Krishna said. So this is where Lord Krishna's first reference comes. And how is he addressed? Shri Bhagwan Uvacha. Now Bhagwan. So in Bhagavad Gita, whenever Lord Krishna speaks, he has been called out as Bhagwan by Sanjay. Of course, we also saw Sanjay also called him just little earlier as Madhusudana, and the significance of the word Madhusudana. Now Bhagwan, who is Bhagwan? So this definition of who is Bhagwan is given by Parashar Muni, the father of Vyasadeva. So, again, we talked about in the setting the scene, where Satyavati, and Parashamani, they had a son, and this was none other than Shri Kṛṣṇa Dvaipanya Vyasdev, Srila Vyasdev, who wrote all the Vedas, all the Puranas, and within Puranas, Bhagavad Gita is in the Mahabharata. So we talked about that as well in Bhagavad Mahabharata as a Purana. So here, who is Bhagwan? Aishvaryasya samagrasya viryasya yasha shriya jnana vairagayuscheva sannam bhaga iti gana. So Parashar Muni gives the definition of Bhagwan is one. Samagrasya means who's 100%, who's full, who's complete. Complete in what? The 6 qualities. He's identifying what are the 6 qualities? Aishvaryasya. So one is full of riches. Aishvaryasya samagrasya viryasya. He's full in strength. Yasha. He is the most famous. He's, all famous. This is the definition of Bhagwan. Yasha Shriya, who is full in all beauty. And Aishwaryasya samagrasya viryasya yashasya jnana vairagyayaschava. Jnana is one who is filled with all knowledge. So Lord Krishna, as we heard, is the absolute the truth. So he is directly and indirectly aware of all that is going on, all that is there. So he is also referred to as Abhigya Swarat, and is completely independent. And Vairagya, he is full in renunciation. So whoever is full in all these 6 qualities is Bhagwan. Now Srila Prabhupada in the purpose, he is revealing that we may see someone who is very rich, but then they are not beautiful. We will see someone who is very famous, but then they are not renounced. They are very much attracted to their glories, and they are not very rich, or they are not very intelligent. And someone who is very intelligent is not so rich, which actually reminds me of an incident. There was a great author, I'm forgetting his name. So he was very famous to be a very intelligent person. So he was in a library, and suddenly Miss Universe, she approaches him and she says, "You know what? You and I," oh yes, Bradshaw. This is Bradshaw. He was approached by the Miss Universe, and she says that, "See, I'm the most beautiful lady in the world, and you're the most intelligent person. And if we get married, we'll have the most intelligent and most beautiful kids together." So Bradshaw at that time smiled at her and he said, "But what if the other thing happens?" And she's like, "What do you mean?" He says, "What if they become ugly like me and dumb like you?" So in this world, we see that not all the 6 qualities are fully present in one person, but Lord Krishna is full in all these 6 potencies. However, he has unlimited potencies and he is full in all those potencies. So that is also very important to understand. But Parashamuni gave this, and that's the definition of Bhagwan. That's why Sanjay, who is a disciple of Vyasadeva, he is calling Lord Krishna as Bhagwan. And he is calling, when he calls Arjun, he says Arjun Uvacha. But when he is calling Bhagwan, how is he addressing? Shri Bhagwan Uvacha. He is saying he is also the husband of the goddess of fortune. So he's in a respectful manner. We call someone in a respectfully we call them Shriman and so Prabhu. Then we call their name. Or in English, we have this tradition of calling His Grace, right? So when we refer to Gauranga Prabhu, we say His Grace Gauranga Prabhu. So this is just matter of etiquettes, which is of course, the way we are having loving exchanges, even though I'm not talking to him, but the respect is visible. So here, also another aspect is, Bhagwan has been identified, and Srila Prabhupada says that this is with respect to the absolute truth. And absolute truth is realized in 3 forms. Vadanti tattva vidas tattvam yajnanam avyayam brahmeti paramatmeti bhagwaniti shabdate. So the learned transcendentalists who know the absolute truth, they realize the absolute truth in 3 forms. And what are these 3 forms? First is Brahman, right? The Brahman effulgence, just like from sun comes sunshine. And then Paramatmeti, the super soul residing in the heart of all living entities, in all the atoms as well as spaces, voids between the atoms. So he is present everywhere. Another way of saying Paramatma is Vasudev, one who is present everywhere, omnipresent. And we talked about this. Omni comes from Om. Om is Pranava Sharva Vedeshu. Lord Krishna says, I am the Pranava Sharva. So it's an expansion of Lord Shri Krishna. Brahman is constantly, the sound that's coming out is Om, A-U-M. So that's the reference given. And Bhagwan, and the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Shri Krishna himself. So Srila Prabhupada in the purport is giving this analogy. He's saying just these 3 features where Sat Chit Anand. So Lord Krishna, the Bhagwan, is referred to as Satchidananda. Ishvara Paramaha Krishna Satchidananda Vigraha Anadira Adira Govindaha Sarva Karana Karanam. Lord Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Paramaha Krishna is the Supreme Person. And his body is full of eternity, Sat, full of knowledge, Chit, and transcendental bliss, happiness. So he is full of all this. So this is how his body is. While in Brahman, which is like the sunshine, it's like the analogy is given of sunshine, the sun planet, and the presiding deity. Here in Garbha, sometimes referred to as Vivaswan, Surya Narayan is the presiding deity. So that's the person, and then the globe, and then the sunlight. And Srila Prabhupada in the purport is saying we have sunshine, the sun planet, and then the sun's surface. If you can enter the sun, because from the globe you can understand that this is where the sunshine is coming, but if you enter the sun, then that is a higher realization. So that example has been given. Another analogy has been given is when the people, they go to the station, they see a train coming, right? From a distance, they came to know there is a train, rail gadi. So the first days when train was being, laid down, the rails were laid down, the first time they went to see the train, and they saw that, yes, there's a great light coming, and they became fearful, and they said, okay, this is, we have seen the train. Yeah, they saw the train, but what did they see? The light of the engine, at the engine, the front of the engine, the bright light, and that's like, wavering in the darkness of night. That's what they saw. So they thought this is train. Now the second, some people, they said, okay, let's just wait, let this thing come. So when they saw the train coming, they saw, oh, it's a long chain of cars, coming like a, traveling like a snake is traveling. So that is like a Paramatma level analogy. So analogically, you can think of, that this is what they thought, and they said, okay, we have seen the train, and they left. Then when the train came to the station and stood, then there's some people who was like, oh, these cars, let's walk in there. And they saw that there are seats, there are berths, and there are places, and that there's an engine in the front, and there are people who are serving, and how people are sitting and conversing, and there are windows and so many things. That is like Bhagwan realization. So they got that better understanding what a train is. So if somebody asks you which of the three really understood what a train is, you would of course say it is the third one, because they actually saw what a train is, they experienced by walking in. So similarly, when we refer to the absolute truth, the supreme absolute truth is Lord Shri Krishna. Ete chans kalaha pumsa Kṛṣṇastu Bhagwan Swayam Indrari Vyakulam Loke Mridayanti Yuge Yuge. So in Srimad Bhagavatam, when Sutta Goswami is describing the various incarnations of the Lord Shiva and answering the questions of the sages, he says that all these planetary portions and the portions of the planetary portions of the Supreme Personality of Godhead are there, but the original Supreme Personality of Godhead is Lord Shri Krishna. From him are the expansion of all these plenary and portion of the plenary expansions that is coming. So here Lord Krishna, he is revealing, and he calls Arjuna as that his behavior is anarya justam. Anarya justam refers to that Arya is the one who is civilized, and one who is not civilized, one who is like a Shudra, one who doesn't know what's what, then he is referred to as anarya. And as a Kshatriya, Arjuna's duty is to fight, but he is giving reasons to not to fight. So Lord Krishna is giving him a shock. Sometimes this is a shock therapy. Psychiatrists, they refer to this, that is giving him a shock, because that would be a great insult if you tell a Kshatriya that he is an anarya. And this is where Lord Krishna is calling him. That at that time, Arjuna, he gives his reasons. So he is further expressing his doubts. So this is the fifth reason that Arjuna gives. And this is where he is basically identifying to Krishna that, he is expressing his doubts that how can I fight with these personalities? He says, oh, killer of the enemies. So now how is he referring to Krishna? Arjuna Vacha Katam Bhishmam Aham Sankhye Dronam Cha Madhusudana Ishubhi Pratiyotsyami Puja Havari Sudana. So he is saying, oh, killer of enemies, right? Madhusudana is killer of Madhu. And how can I counterattack with arrows? In the battle of men like Dronacharya and Bhishma Pitama, my grandsire Bhishma, who are worthy of my worship. Now when he is calling Krishna with this name, the killer of Madhu, he is saying that you kill Madhu, we understand, and you kill the demons. But if you are faced with your own spiritual master Sandipani Muni, or if you are faced with your own grandsire Ugrasen, would you be fighting with them? Would you shoot arrows at them? So he's provoking Lord Krishna to further support his reason, because he doesn't like when Lord Krishna is calling him with this hard words. And then further to enhance that, Arjun, he's calling out for Lord Shri Krishna with that mood of compassion that yes, how can I take a step? This is a very doubtful state that you will be able to behave. So in the 5th verse he is saying, Guru nahatva hi mahanubhavan shreyo bhoktum bhaksham api haloke hatvat kaman tu guru nivhava bhunjiya bhogan rudhira pradigdhan. He's calling out, it would be better in this world by begging than to live at the cost of the lives of the great souls who are my teachers. Even though desiring worldly gain, they are superiors. If they are killed, everything we enjoy will be tainted with blood. Pratigdhan. So he is calling out to that characteristic that it will be tainted with blood. And when he is giving a very strong reason that these are worshipable personalities, and he further continues to elaborate his prayers. He is saying it in a very sorrowful mood that how could you say this, Krishna? How could you say it? He is saying in the 6th verse, Na chetad vidmaha katranno gariyo yadva jayema yadiva no jeyuhu yaneva hatva na jajivishamas te avastita pramukhe dhadarashtraha. So Arjuna is calling out for the compassion of Lord Krishna. He is saying, nor do we know which is better. So this is where he becomes doubtful. Right? So this is where he is actually expressing his doubt. That's the 5th reason. He is showing his indecisiveness. He is saying that we do not know what is better, conquering the sons of Dhritarashtra or being conquered by them. If we kill the sons of Dhritarashtra, then we do not care to live. We should not care to live. Yet they are now standing before us on the battlefield. And he is calling them that they are driven by greed. He is expressing Karparnya dosho pahata svabhavaha prachami tvam dharma sammudha chetaha yacheyasyan nishchitam bruhi tanme shishyasteham shadimam tvam prapannam. Now this is where the principle of taking shelter of a spiritual master is visible. In the 7th verse, Arjuna, he is showing his indecisiveness. He is saying, now I am confused about my duty. Right? He is identifying Karparnya dosha. He is saying that this is miserliness. Karparnya doesn't mean humility here. Kripa sometimes says, but Karparnya means weakness. And dosha pahat, because of this weakness of in miserliness, Karparnya, my nature, this is what I'm experiencing at this time, so I'm confused about my duty, about my dharma. And dharma sammudha cheta, so I'm bewildered and I've lost all composure because of miserly weakness. So he's identifying this very clearly. And in this condition, he is now changing the relationship. I'm asking you to tell me for certain what is best for me, what is right, what is beneficial, how can I be in the right path. So he's taking that position, but is he saying that you showed me the right path? So in this world today, if you meet someone who's knowledgeable, people have the tendency of directly challenging them and saying, oh, if you're so intelligent, why don't you prove this and prove that and prove that? Well, a person who's intelligent in a better position doesn't have to prove anything to anyone. Yet at the same time, this challenging attitude makes it, for us it is not beneficial because we cannot approach the higher knowledge. Rāma had this attitude. So once Rāma, as has been given in the Shastras and been described by many devotees, is he met Devashi Narad, and he came to know about this spiritual knowledge. So of course, being materialistic minded, he wanted to acquire everything, how to gain this knowledge which is giving you amazing potencies. So he said, yes, I want this Brahma Vidya. And Devashi Narad said, no, you cannot have that. So Rāma, he took out his sword, placing it on Devashi Narad's throat, and he says, you better give it to me, otherwise I'll kill you. He says, this proves that you are not qualified to have this knowledge. And at that time, Rāma became very angry, and he tried to cut off the head of Devashi Narad. And he did that, his head went through the body of Devashi Narad. Nothing happened, it just went through and through. And nothing happened to Devashi Narad. He's like, what is this? It's like, I have a spiritual body. Now his tendency is, okay, I don't just want that knowledge, now I want this body. And he's like, see, this is the disqualification. You cannot have it. So with a challenging mood, we cannot. And that is not the right way to approach. The way to approach is in humble state of mind, with proper understanding that please reveal to me what is best for me, what is beneficial for me. So when we meet our teachers, and this is where we have observed when we grow up, that when we meet our elementary school teachers, we really respect them very highly. Then when we meet our middle school and higher secondary school, the higher classes teachers, we respect them not so much. When we meet our college level professors, we have some respect, but not so much. Now the interesting thing is, the more humble we are, the higher respect it is, and the more benefit we get. I'll give you from a practical example. Back in school, I was being told again and again by my father that anytime you see your teachers, wish them, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, how are you, how can I help you? It's just, and see an opportunity. Sometimes people say, oh, this is buttering. But a teacher sees that this student has a potential, so they become, pleasing. And when they are teaching the subject matters, they take that extra step of explaining you nicely because you have been very humble. So the teacher, he becomes benevolently disposed towards your attitude, your pleasing attitude of really making an effort. And so it gives us an opportunity to attain knowledge, to be able to understand. And another thing that I experienced is that sometimes we have to take humble position. In my school, there was a new rule being implemented, which most of the students could not follow, but I followed, and that changed my life. And that rule was, if you don't know question of an answer, means if the teacher is telling you something and you don't understand it, you can stand up, and request, could you please explain it? And the teacher will have to explain before moving to the next subject matter. Now this was a very interesting one, because till this was introduced, I wasn't okay, but then this was a great opportunity, and I would stand up if I didn't understand something. And now the kids around me, they would be laughing, yet at the same time, I would not worry about the kids. I was keeping my attention to the subject matter that was being discussed, which allowed the teacher to explain it to me, and he would ask, what is it that you don't understand? And we would have a conversation. And just in a couple of minutes, that conversation would reveal what was missing in my understanding. So I could move on forward, and the teacher would continue to move on. And that helped not just me, many of my friends, they said, we were feeling ashamed to stand up, but we were glad that at least you asked that question, which helped us to understand that subject matter. And it is for everyone's benefit if we approach in a humble manner to the higher authorities, to the higher personalities, and one who has seen the truth, right? One who has realized the truth, one who is living the life of truth. So that person can reveal the truth to us. So this is also very important. And here the relationship between Lord Shri Kṛṣṇa and Arjuna as cousins, it changes, because Vasudeva is brother of Pratha. Pratha is Kunti Devi, Queen Kunti. And Kṛṣṇa is Vasudeva, right, son of Vasudeva. And Arjuna is referred to as Partha, son of Pritha. son of Queen Kunti. So they are actually first cousins. And now the relationship is changing. And when the relationship changes, Lord Kṛṣṇa, he takes he takes the position of a spiritual master and he is instructing. So Lord Kṛṣṇa is the original spiritual master from whom the 4 paramparas are coming. So we talked about that in many classes. So here, Arjuna is in a humble mood. He is asking Lord Shri Kṛṣṇa that he is not finding any way to drive away this grief and which is drying up his senses. He already talked about that the Gandiva is slipping, his skin is burning, he's experiencing goosebumps, his eyes is filled with tears, and his body is shaking, shivering, and so forth. His limbs are shivering. So he is experiencing all these aspects, and then Sanjay, he is revealing to the Dhritarashtra that now that Arjuna has taken shelter, he has surrendered to Kṛṣṇa to reveal his benefit, Lord Kṛṣṇa is going to instruct him. So Sanjay is saying, Evam mukta hrishikesham gunakesha parantapaha na yosyaiti govindam muktva tushnim babhuvaha. So he is saying that having spoken thus, Arjun, chastiser of enemies. So Parantapa is chastiser of enemies. This is also very important. He's saying, told Kṛṣṇa, Govinda, I shall not fight, and fell silent. So while he is taking shelter, he is saying, I shall not fight till you reveal what is driving my, the doubts that I am experiencing. And at that time, Lord Kṛṣṇa starts smiling in the midst of both the armies. So Arjuna is saying that he spoke the following words to the grief-stricken Arjuna. And this is where from 11 to 30 is where identity, who are we, that has been revealed. And 11, 12, 13, yes, is where Lord Kṛṣṇa is revealing. Actually 12, 13, 14 are very important verses where Lord Kṛṣṇa reveals who are we. Natvayevaham jatu nasam natyam neme janadipaha na cheva na bhavishyamaha sarve vayamatah param. Never was there a time where I did not exist, nor you nor all these kings, nor in the future shall any of us cease to be. So Lord Kṛṣṇa is identifying that whoever you are seeing on this battlefield, they are eternal in nature. Now this could be very bewildering, because if somebody hears this without the full context, then they will say, wait a minute, all these bodies, we have seen these personalities die on the battlefield. We talked about it, that on the Kaurava side there were only 3 people who were left at the end, Kripacharya, Kritvarma and Ashwathama, and on the Pandava side only 8 personalities. While, how is it possible? So in the next verse, Lord is saying, Dehino asmin yatha dehe kaumaram yavanam jara tata dehantar praptir dhiras tatra namuhyati. That as the embodied soul continuously passes in the body from a boyhood to youth to old age, the soul similarly passes into another body at death. A sober person is not bewildered by such a change. Dhiras tatra namayati, a sober person. So a person who understands this, who is well behaved, who understands this, understands that it is the bodies, they change, they get destroyed, but the soul is eternal in nature. So it just passes from one body to another. And scientifically it has been proven that all the cells in our body are replaced every 7 years. So by the 7th year, we have a completely new body. So our body is constantly going through a transformation. There are 6 changes that go on. Srila Prabhupada in the purport is explaining. We take birth, the body takes birth. So again, we living entities are eternal, but the body that we get, right? The body takes birth, it grows for some time, it sustains itself for some time, then it produces progeny, so we have children, and then it dwindles, and finally it dies. So these are the 6 changes pertaining to the body. But for the soul, there is no change. And then he is identifying, Lord Krishna is revealing, Lord Shri Krishna is revealing that, O son of Kunti, he is saying Kaunteya, Matra sparshāstu Kaunteya, Shītoshna sukha dukkha agma apayana anitya stam titikshasva bharata. So he is calling Arjuna by 2 very important names, Kaunteya, Queen Kunti, who has been very tolerant, who has taken burden of lot of atrocities that was directed towards her. And also he is also called by the name Bharata, the descendant of the Bharat dynasty. So and we talked about how Bharat Maharaj, he was very humble, and he was also very tolerant. So he is invoking the tolerance in Arjuna. He says that yes, you should be tolerant, just like the summer and winter seasons, they come and go. Similarly, happiness and distress, they come and go. So they are agma apayano, they come. Agma apayano means they go, and anitya, they are temporary in nature. So one, who is tolerant is not bewildered in this state. So he learn to tolerate this. So in this way, Lord Krishna, he is identifying the identity to Arjuna. And in the 16th verse, he talks about that the body is constantly changing. Nasto vidyate bhavo, na bhavo vidyate sataha, ubayorapi drashtantas tva anyos tattva darshibhihi. So Lord Krishna is saying, those who are seers of the truth have concluded that of the non-existent, which is changing, the material body, there is no endurance, and of the eternal soul, right, there is no change. So eternal soul does not change. That's why growing up, dwindling of the body, getting sick, dying, these appear very unnatural to us, because that is not our true nature. That is what the body experiences. And this has been concluded, Lord Krishna is saying, by the study of both. And further he reveals the nature of the soul. So again, from 11 to 30, he is talking about that the soul stays same. And there is a very important verse, which is verse 22. Vasamsi jinani yatha vihaya. No, actually this one is, 20th one is, Na jayate mriyate va kadachin naham bhutva bhavitava na bhuyah ajo nitya shashvatoyam purano na hanyate hanyamane sharire. That for the soul there is neither birth or death at any time. He has not come into being, will not come into being, and does not come into being. He is unborn, eternal, ever existing and primeval. He is not slain when the body is slain. So he is revealing the nature of the soul in this one. And he also reveals in the 22nd verse, so that was 20th verse, Vasamsi jinani yatha vihaya navani grinati taro purani tata sharirani vihaya jinhananyani samyati navani dehi. So as a person puts on new garments, giving up the old one, the soul similarly accepts new material bodies, giving up the old and useless ones. So yes, the changing of the bodies by the soul has been very nicely described here. Why that change happens is revealed in the 8th chapter. So we'll be looking at that when we study the 8th chapter. But here, this glimpse from the Karmakand perspective as how the material nature is working and how the soul is transmigrating from one body to another. So this has been revealed by Lord Shri Krishna. And then he continues to elaborate the characteristic of the soul, which can never be cut into pieces, which can never be burned, which can never be made wet, and so forth. And he also gives, today in the material world, people say, okay, the body is a combination, so all these living entities that we see, all the beings in this material world, they are just a combination of chemicals. So even there, Lord Krishna gives one verse, revealing this. Ata chainam nityagatam nityam va manase mritam tathapi tvam mahabaho nainam shochitum arhasi. If, however, you think that the soul or the symptoms of life will always be born and die forever, you still have no reason to lament, O mighty armed. Because he is saying, if you think that these bodies are just chemicals put together and they are functioning in this manner, then the destruction of the bodies does not matter, because they were anyway chemicals to start with. And of course, if they were just chemicals combination coming into the form of bodies, they can always evolve again. So he is addressing the today's materialistic mindset, that even from that perspective there is no reason to lament. And so till 30th verse, Lord Krishna is, and the 29th verse is a surprise verse, where he is saying that the soul is very surprising, and he describes in various ways as how soul is surprising. Now from 31 to 53rd verse, he is identifying T, the two dharmas. T is for two dharmas, Swadharma and Sanatan Dharma. So 31 to 38 he is identifying the Karma Kanda aspect, and then 39th through 53 he is explaining Jnana Yoga. So that has been explained by Lord Shri Krishna. And he is basically saying that, in the 31st verse, when he is expressing the Karma Kanda, the Swadharma aspect, he is saying that your specific duty is as of a Kshatriya. Right? So we all have been placed in our various positions, and we should understand what is our prescribed duty. And prescribed duty has been revealed through the Varnashram Dharma. So each of us belong to a specific Varna based on the qualities, as it will be revealed later on, and the activities that we engage in. So that will describe our prescribed duties. And of course, Sanatan Dharma is that Jivera Surupaya Krishna Nitya. So all activities that we perform should be dovetailed in the service of Lord Shri Krishna, to please Lord Shri Krishna. So here he is saying that Kshatriyas who get an opportunity like this to fight on the at the battle of Kurukshetra are very lucky. He is revealing to Arjuna that you have a great opportunity, which actually is opening the doors for the heavenly planets. While Arjuna was saying this is a lose-lose scenario, Lord Krishna is saying that actually this is a win-win scenario. And as a fighter, you have to fight, because otherwise all the warriors on this battlefield, they will not see that how compassionate you are. If you walk away from this battlefield, they will be, calling you bad names. Your glories will be lost. And that is worse than death for a Kshatriya, for a great warrior like you. However, because your nature is that of a warrior, at the end you will engage in war. But this is a great opportunity. So again, opportune time. Every moment that we live in our life, we have an opportunity. Even right now, you had this opportunity. You could either be here, hearing and reading Bhagavad Gita, studying Bhagavad Gita with me, or you could just be sleeping, or you could be doing some other activity, or you could be, listening to some kirtan and so forth. So everywhere the choice has been given. The important thing is, whatever choices we make, the right choices are the ones which keep Lord Krishna in the center and engage in pleasing Lord Shri Krishna. So engage in devotional service pleases Lord Shri Krishna. Those are the right activities, and not the activities which are from materialistic perspective for sense gratification. Now, till 38, he is revealing the Karma Kanda aspect. Like, if you fight without considering, and how should you fight? Thinking of it as your duty. So Lord Krishna is revealing to Arjuna that you are a Kshatriya and you should fight without considering profit or gain, without considering victory or defeat, without considering happiness or distress, because that is your duty. So that is, the dualities of the material world, they cause bewilderment. So Lord Krishna is revealing that rise above the relativity of this material world and be situated on the absolute platform. That's where the Swadharma is performed in line with Sanatana Dharma. That's where our prescribed duties can be performed in line with our constitutional position. That is the alignment we need to go. Relativity belongs to the three modes of material nature, to this material world. And that is where we don't want to function. We want to rise above that and understand that we have to perform our duties irrespective of what is going on. So when we go out for book distribution, we go out with that mood. And today we came to know that one devotee in Russia, he was attacked, stabbed many times by his leg. He's in ICU. So I think his name is Kripanidhi Prabhu.
Post is there on
Yeah, so there is a post on Bhagavad Gita page. So please see. And we all request that please pray to the Lordship, for his quick recovery and,
protection.
For his protection. And very simple way is to, chant the holy name. Hare Kṛṣṇa, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rāma, Rāma Rāma, Hare Hare. So sometimes materialists, they, just like the sons of Dhritarashtra were attacking, ready to fight, they attack the devotees. But devotees still continue to perform their duties, because that's where, rising above the relativity of this world, being situated in the absolute platform, to please Lord Shri Krishna, that is the mood, to please Lord Shri Krishna. So he was distributing the books to help the humanity, to help the recipients of the Lord's mercy, but at the same time, some people, they just get disturbed and they, cause havoc on devotees. So, without considering happiness or distress, one should continue to serve. Now, there are, again, from 38th onward, all these verses are being described, and it goes up. And then Arjun, he becomes, he's able to relate to what Lord Krishna is saying. And Lord Krishna reveals the glories of devotional service. So this is where the glimpse of devotional service comes. That is in the verse 40th. And the 40th verse, Lord is saying, Niha bikram nashyo asti pratyavayo na vidyate Swalpam apyasya dharmasya trayate mahato bhayat. So he's identifying that in this endeavor, working, rising above the relativity, performing your prescribed duties, when you are engaging, there is no loss or diminution. And a little advancement on this path, then the engagement of such activities, can protect one from the most dangerous type of fear. So yes, there is always in the animal stage, or at the bottom where the pranamaya state, we always experience this eat, sleep, mate, defend, right? So that defense is because of fear. We want to secure ourselves. But more than the security of the body, or expansion of the body, which is our loved ones, is the fear of the soul. That's why in Shishopnishad, many times people who don't engage in devotional service, they are called killer of the soul, because they are engaging in activities which doesn't just kill the soul, it doesn't just cause them lot of difficulty for the soul, which is our very being. Rather, they also cause a lot of pain to the Lordship, who is present in everyone's heart as Paramatma. So that is a very important aspect. So engagement in devotional service, even a little endeavor, yields great benefit and frees one from such fears. Now, in 41st verse, now that he is talking at the Buddhi Yoga, he is giving the glimpse, Lord Krishna is giving Arjuna the glimpse of Buddhi Yoga, which is Bhakti Yoga. He is identifying the 41st verse, how the mindset should be. He is saying, Vyavasayatmika buddhi eke kuru nandanaha bahushaka sanantascha buddhayo avyasayinam. So those who are on this path are resolute in purpose. So they have one focus, they have one aim, and their aim is one. O beloved child of the Kurus, the intelligence of those who are irresolute is many-branched. Now when you hear this, you are immediately reminded. So Arjuna can directly relate to it. So when the Kauravas and Pandavas were learning how to fight with weapons from Dronacharya, their teacher, at that time was Dronacharya, he had placed a wooden bird in a tree, on a branch, and he was asking his disciples to come one by one to ready to shoot an arrow. And he would ask, what do you see? And when Duryodhana's time came, he said, I see the clouds, I see it's nice sunny day, I see the lots of trees, and I see so many things, and I also see you. So Dronacharya said, don't shoot, and then he asked next. So similarly he was asking, and everyone was saying, even Yudhishthira Maharaj, he said of many different aspects. But when it was Arjun's turn, Dronacharya asked him, what do you see? And what was the target? Dronacharya said that you are going to penetrate the eye of the bird, that wooden bird in the tree. So Arjun said, my dear spiritual master, I only see the eye of the bird in the tree. I do not see anything else. So at that time Dronacharya said, shoot. And Arjun shot, and of course the arrow shot and attained its aim. So this is very important, that being scattered all over the place is not the right way. We should be focused in our attention to serve Lord Shri Krishna as Lord Krishna desires. So this example reminds Arjun that he has to be focused. And what is the focus? To please Lord Shri Krishna by our actions. And we perform actions through three media: mind, body and words. So we have to engage all our activities to please Lord Shri Krishna. And Lord Krishna says afterwards, talking about the Gyan Kanda, he's saying that yes, people of small knowledge, poor fund of knowledge was a very common term Srila Prabhupada used to use. Lord Krishna is saying that people of small knowledge, they are attracted, they have become attached to the flowery word of the Vedas. Now Vedas means knowledge, and this knowledge that we see in Vedas pertain to all qualities of man, all qualities, which means they provide formulas or ways that people can follow. They provide rituals, they provide yantra, mantra and tantra with respect to all quality of people. If someone wants to attain something, then they identify the solution is this. If someone wants to get an important position, then the solution is this. If someone wants to remove the distress coming from one of the material causes, then the solution is this. So they're talking of all of the subject matters. However, when we have Bhagavatam or Bhagavad Gita, they're talking of the topmost subject matters. Bhagavad Gita is like the elementary study, Srila Prabhupada said, and Bhagavatam is like the college level, the graduate level study, and the postgraduate is Chaitamrita. So our focus, the focus of bhaktas, is not to enjoy in this material world, but rather to engage in serving Lord Shri Krishna. And this is the first time in 45th verse that Lord Krishna talks about the three modes of material nature. He is talking, Te gurnya vishya veda, niste gurnyo bhavarjuna, nidvando nitya sattvostho, niryoga kshema atmavan. So he is saying that the subject of the three modes of material nature, this is what the Vedas mainly deal with. Right, like I was saying, people being influenced by the three modes of material nature, based on their activities and their nature, they are looking for solutions. So Vedas provide those solutions. But Lord Krishna is saying, oh Arjun, become transcendental to the three modes and be free from all dualities. So again he is reminding him, don't be attached to the relativity of this material, but rather be on that absolute platform where your swadharma, your duties, are being performed with respect to the results. You are performing it aligned with your Sanatan Dharma, and free from all anxiety of gain and safety, and be established in the self. So perform your duty as you are intended to be. Now Lord Krishna gives a very nice example, and this is an example, and Srila Prabhupada used to give this another analogy in this aspect, is where Lord Krishna is saying that just like all the purpose of a small well can be served by a great reservoir of water, so similarly all purpose of the Vedas can be served by one who knows the purpose behind them. What is the purpose of the Vedas? So it is very important to understand the essence of the Vedas. Now Shri Krishna Dvapana Vedvyas, when he wrote all the Vedas, he was still not satisfied. Why? And Devashi Narad came and he revealed to him, why are you not satisfied? Because you have not glorified Lord Krishna sufficiently. And so he wrote Bhagavatam at the maturity of his age, under the instruction of his spiritual master Devashi Narad. And that satisfied him. And that's where, it has been again and again when we do the Srimad Bhagavatam class, we are covering the first canto, please join us on that, where it has been said that devotion service to be performed, ahetuki apratihata, without any motivation, so completely unmotivated and uninterrupted. So that is how devotional service should be performed, without caring about the relativity of this material world. And the purpose of the Vedas is to please Lord Shri Kṛṣṇa, to attain the love of Godhead. So when you, with loving manner, with devoted manner, with humility, you serve Lord Shri Kṛṣṇa, that is the important aspect. Now, a famous verse comes, which is 47th verse. We all have heard this again and again, especially in India. Karmarnevadhikaraste ma phaleshu kadachana ma karma phala hetu bhur ma te sangro stva karmani. So, karmarnevadhikaraste, you have the right to perform your duty. So many times people, they think, oh, we are karma yogis because we are performing our duty. And but at the same time, they may be driven by greed. They are attached to the fruits of their labor. So the second part of this, the second phrase of this verse reveals that how you should be performing your duty. Ma phaleshu kadachana, but you are not entitled to the fruits of your action. So, when you perform your duty, it should be unmotivated. Ahetuki apratihata. And apratihata refers to uninterrupted. That means, ma karma phala hetu bhur te sangrastva karmani. And you should never consider yourself to the cause of your activities. And never be attached to not doing your duty. So, this is where apratihata is uninterrupted. You should perform your duty, because if you feel that the fruits don't belong to you, it belongs to Lord Shri Kṛṣṇa, then there will be two tendencies. First is not realizing it, and you would say, actually, I am the cause. If I had not worked, these fruits would not have happened. So that is the wrong mindset, that you should not consider yourself to be the cause of these fruits. And because you understand that you are not the cause and these fruits are coming and that you are not, they don't belong to you, you are not attached to them, then sometimes people will say, then why should I be engaged? If this is not meant for my sense gratification, it is not meant for my enjoyment, then why should I be engaged in these activities? He is saying, but never be attached to not doing your duty. So the duty has to be performed, apratihata, uninterrupted. Only then, we can be satisfied, we can be happy, we can be well established, and we can be on our spiritual journey. So that has been revealed here by Lord Shri Kṛṣṇa. So it's very interesting that sometimes people say, oh, I am a karma yogi. Srila Prabhupada, when once, talking about devotional service and how bhakti is the supreme yoga, a person approached and said, I am a karma yogi, I work, right? I perform my duties. And there was a response coming, so are you attached to what you get from the karma? He says, of course. Then you are not a karma yogi, you are actually a karmi. That you are attached to the fruits of your labor. So this understanding is very important. Whatever we attain, and a very nice example has been given by the acharyas, that a person, a landlord, he employs some labor and he engages them in agriculture business that he is running. And they are tilling the land and they are growing all the crops, and at the end the crops that has been grown, who does it belong to? That could be a question asked. Well, it belongs to the landlord, because he is the one who employed them. And so whatever they have received in due course of their service is actually being provided by landlord, but everything actually belongs to the landlord. Even in a kingdom, if people have houses, then they are temporary proprietor of those houses. Actually, the king owns the whole of kingdom. So that's another. When people hear this, they get bewildered, and especially in today's world, the effect of Kali Yuga. Kala Vasmin Yuge, people get disturbed, and with a small, pinprick, they start quarrel. Yet this is given in Shastras. So we are referring to the Shastras and understanding that everything that we see has been provided to us by Lord Shri Kṛṣṇa. And if we try to use it for our purpose, then we are actually thieves. Srila Prabhupada was in Mayapur and he was, going on a morning walk. He was introduced to a gentleman who was an industrialist. He was a proprietor of a glass factory in Calcutta. So he was also dressed in white dhoti kurta, and Srila Prabhupada was walking. When he was introduced, Srila Prabhupada asked him, "What do you do?" He's like, "Oh, I'm proprietor. I own a glass factory." So Srila Prabhupada asked him, "Oh, so where does glass come from?" He said, "Glass comes from silica." And then he realized that Srila Prabhupada may not know that chemical formula and all that. So he said, "Actually, it comes from sand." Srila Prabhupada said, "Where does sand come from?" Now he was a pious person, so he said, "Sand comes from Kṛṣṇa." So he's like, Srila Prabhupada says, "Oh, so you are a thief, you're stealing from Kṛṣṇa." And everybody laughed. Even the gentleman, he laughed. And then he went to the back, and other people, as they were introduced on the walk, they continued. While coming back, he again came to the front and talking to Srila Prabhupada, he said, "Actually, I do donate some to to Kṛṣṇa as charity." He said, "Oh," Srila Prabhupada responded, "So you are a small thief. You don't keep all of it, you give some back. But you do keep some of it." So again, he laughed again, being a pious person, he was not offended. Because the truth is this, and sometimes truth can be very bitter, right? Yet at the same time, in a humble state when we are approaching, if we are pious, we will be able to accept the truth in the rightful manner and understand the purpose of life. So here, he is telling Arjuna, Lord Kṛṣṇa is telling Arjuna to be equipoised. And in the Jnana Yoga state, he is telling Arjuna, he's telling Arjuna to be focused. And so, just like the purpose of, large river can take care of the purpose that's being served by a large reservoir, a lake or a pond, that can serve the purpose of a well. And Srila Prabhupada gave another example that if you have a $100 note, then of course it has $50 in it, it has $10 in it, it has $5 in it, it has $1 in it. Similarly, one who understands the purpose behind the Vedas is equally intelligent, and it will save much time and energy. So instead of being caught up in the three modes of material nature, Lord Kṛṣṇa is telling Arjuna to be situated and focused with the proper knowledge. And 47th is the one that we just covered, the famous verse. And from 52 to 72, Lord is discussing the characteristic of an Atmaram, one who fully rejoices within himself, being situated at the absolute platform. And such a person is Sthit Prajna. He is very well situated. So, in the 54th verse itself, Arjuna is curious that, you have told me so much. I want to know some characteristic. Arjuna is asking, Arjuna Vacha Sthit Prajnas ka bhasha samadhistasya keshava sthitadhi kim prabhasheta kim asita vrajeta kim. So he's saying, Arjuna said, "Oh Krishna, what are the symptoms of one whose consciousness is thus merged in transcendence? How does he speak and what is his language? How does he sit and how does he walk?" Now this is very important aspect, that when Arjuna is asking, if we see someone very happy, right, we see that his speech is very joyful, he's speaking very nicely, his face expression is very nice, his language is very civilized, and sometimes, of course, when someone is too proud, then they just all about aham mameti, they are always talking about I and mine. But a person who is very well situated, a very pious person, he would be sitting very nicely, very confidently, and he would be walking with confidence as well. While on the other hand, one who is being pushed very heavily, who's feeling very low, very depressed, you can say his language, his voice would be faltering, his expressions would be nervous, he would be not walking with so much confidence, and he would not be sitting, he may be slouching and so forth. So these characteristics, Arjuna is wanting to know what are the characteristics of a person who is in this state, Sthit Prajna, who is Atmaram, who is well situated at that absolute platform, Brahma Bhuta. Yes, in perfect consciousness. What is the characteristic of such a person? So when he is asking, Lord Kṛṣṇa reveals that such a person, first of all, these desires, the various desires of sense gratification, they arise from mental concoction. They're just our own manufactured ideas. And when one's mind is completely purified of these concocted ideas of these and find full satisfaction by rising above the dualities, by understanding the Swadharma, so he is now bringing to that next level of of Atmaram stage, Sthit Pragya. That's what Lord Krishna is identifying, the characteristic of an Atmaram. He is fully self-satisfied. That's what Atmaram means, a person who's fully self-satisfied. Tushti also means renounced, right? Renunciation. So one who is fully renounced from the three modes of material nature, from the dealings with the three modes of material nature. He is said to be in pure transcendental consciousness, and that is none other than Krishna consciousness. So Lord Krishna, he is revealing these facts, and there are some amazing verses here. And the 58th verse is a very important verse, how to be in that consciousness. Yada samhurate chayam kurmo angāniva sarvashaha indriyāni indriyabhyas tasya pragya pratisthita. So Lord Krishna says to Arjuna, one who is able to withdraw his senses from sense objects, as the tortoise draws its limbs within the shell, is firmly fixed in perfect consciousness. So we should not dwell on the subject matters. And this is very important because from 62 and 63 he is actually identifying when one does not do that. So he's saying that this is how, just like a turtle, like a tortoise withdraws its limbs and does not interact with the outside world, it withdraws its limbs in the shell. Similarly, we have to control our senses and not let them dwell on the sense objects. And this secret has been revealed, that if you allow your senses to dwell on the sense objects, what would be the result? That's given in the 62 and 63rd verse. Dhyayato vishyan pumsa sangasteshu pajayate sanga sanjayate kama kama krodho bijayate. Dhyayate vishyan pumsa. If your mind is constantly dwelling, if your senses are constantly engaged with the sense objects, and your mind is contemplating those sense objects, a person develops, lust. Sangha sanjayate kamaha. So from that, lust develops, and from lust, kamat krodho vijayate. From lust, krodh, anger develops. Now, what is the effect of anger? He is also identifying. Krodhat bhavati sammoha, sammoha smriti brahmasat, smriti brahmasat buddhinasho, buddhinashad vinashyati. So, from krodhat bhavati sammoha. From krodh, right, delusion arises. From anger, delusion arises. So, when we become angry, we become bewildered in our material world. And before that, bewilderment of memory is delusion. We do not know what's what. So, we cannot make the right decisions in that state. So, our memory is bewildered. We are not able to collect all the sequence of events. And when our memory is bewildered, our intelligence is lost. And he's directly identifying that, Arjuna, you were thinking of all your relatives associated with your body. So you are not well situated in your Swadharma. And that is the cause of your fall down. That will cause your fall down if you don't fight. And he's identifying that once one's intelligence is lost because of the bewilderment of memory, the intelligence is lost, one falls down. So when we want to understand the cause, it is not important that sometimes people say, okay, such and such person had doubts of their duties, so they have fallen. They should not become considered saints. This was said about Mother Teresa, why she performed so many saintly activities without expecting any returns. She was just serving the humanity, but somebody found her diary and said, oh, she was having a doubt that is there God. And sometimes saintly people, they make such comments that there is so much pain. How could there be so much pain if there is God? So sometimes they're expressing that, but then people misunderstand it. And they say, oh, this person, they are thinking they're not saintly, they have a doubt, that means they are not saintly. Well, there are many situations in life that happens. It is not that you fell down. What is important is that you refuse to get up again from wherever you are to a higher platform. You know, there is a what the heck effect that sometimes people use. Well, I have already committed this mistake, what the heck, I can just continue to commit this mistake. That is the true fall down. Because if you make a mistake, then it's always good to correct your mistake. And there is a very nice saying in India, सुबह का भूला अगर शाम को घर आ जाए तो उसे भूला नहीं कहते. A person who has lost their path in the morning, if they return home, back home, they find their path back home in the evening, then they are not considered lost because they have found their path. So one who has corrected their mistake is not fallen anymore, right? So if you were not able to solve a math problem when you first attempted it, but you were able to solve it after you understood it, means you understand what it takes to solve the problem. So similarly, if you're trying to do something and in the initial attempt you don't succeed, doesn't mean that you are a failure. Rather, understanding it properly and having the right skill and will, when you attempt it with the right support and guidance and the right understanding, and you are able to solve the problem, then you are not fallen, you are not a failure. So again, people put these tags because, and such people are called mental, right? They're mental in the perspective because they're judging everyone, and that's why the term comes judgmental. So sometimes it's also effect of moon, right? As lunar effect. That's why such mental people are also called lunatics. So that's also very important for us to understand that we should not be lunatic. We should never be judging anyone because someone may be showing up no sign, like Dhruv Maharaj, when Shuruchi pushed him from his father's lap, he was not known as a great devotee. But when he was hurt in his heart was pierced by the harsh words of his stepmother and no response from his father, and so he took to devotional service and he received such a great personality, Devashi Narad, as his spiritual master, and under the guidance of the spiritual master he took to devotional service and became glorious all over the universe, and he finally attained the supreme abode. And he is also the, his kingdom is again within the material world that is considered part of the spiritual world, Dhruv Loka, the North Star that we talk about. And a person, Lord Kṛṣṇa is saying, should be completely free of attachment and aversion, should be able to control his senses through regulative principles. So how do you control your senses? Through regulative principles of freedom. And that is completely coming from the mercy of the Lord. So mercy of the Lord, how do you invoke? Just by raising your hand and calling out, Hare Kṛṣṇa, Kṛṣṇa Kṛṣṇa, Hare Hare, Hare Rāma, Rāma Rāma, Hare Hare. So, and finally, Lord Kṛṣṇa gives a beautiful, as he is describing that, the time for materialists, when they are awake, the transcendentalists are, not active. And they are not active, then transcendental is active. So all being, for time of awakening for all being is night for the introspective sage, and time of all beings awakening is for the self-control. It's actually the night for of all being is the awakening of the sage as well. And then he gives this in the 17th verse, a beautiful analogy. Lord Kṛṣṇa is revealing this to Arjuna. Apuryamanam achala pratishtham samudamapa pravishanti yadvad tadvad kamayam pravishanti sarve sashantim apnoti na kama kami. A person who is not disturbed by this incessant flow of desires that enter like rivers into the ocean, which is ever being filled but is always still, can alone achieve peace, and not the man who strives to satisfy such desires. So Lord Kṛṣṇa is saying that, Samudra, the ocean, you don't see ocean, going in heavy waves when the incessant waves are, the rivers are merging into it. The ocean is standing still. And Srila Prabhupada, when he was once walking, on the west coast, he pointed towards Prashant Mahasagar. Prashant also means Pacific Ocean. So it's very interesting that the Hindi name, Indian name and English name, they coincide so much. And he said, why is Pacific Ocean so calm on the top? So his disciples couldn't respond. Then Srila Prabhupada said, because it's very deep. So that's how a person is. We have to be very deep. So we have to build that depth by the engagement in Krishna consciousness, by taking to devotion service, by taking to the chanting of the holy name. Hare Kṛṣṇa, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rāma, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. And following the prescribed duties, which are aligned with our constitutional position, without caring about the relativity of this world, without caring about somebody is glorifying us or somebody is saying bad words about us. We should simply try to do the best we can, and that is the effort we are making here. And I understand that you are making here when you are listening to Bhagavad Gita. And we together are on our spiritual path, progressing under the shelter of Srila Prabhupada and the Acharyas in the Guru Parampara and Lord Shri Krishna. So this is where Lord Krishna, he concludes the second chapter, where he is concluding the Sthit Pragya stage, as he is describing to Arjuna, the Atma Ram stage, by saying, this is the way of spiritual and godly life, after attaining which a man is not bewildered. And if one is thus situated, even at the hour of death, one can enter into the kingdom of God. One can go back home, back to Godhead. So he himself is blessing that just by being situated and carrying out our activities in Krishna consciousness, we can attain the goal of life, the supreme abode, love of Godhead. Hare Krishna. This is where we would end this chapter. Thank you very much for joining today. So in the next class, we'll be covering chapter 3, Karma Yoga. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Srimad Bhagavad Gita ki jai, Anant Koti Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai, Nitai Gaur Premanande, Hari Hari Bol.
Hare Krishna.